Today's video is about the best controller I've ever used. It's called the FlyDigi Apex 4, and I just want to say before I even get into this that this is not sponsored at all. I just have been looking for this controller forever, and it finally exists, and I finally have it, and I'm excited about it, and I want to tell you guys about it. Now, I shouldn't do this for algorithm's sake, but I don't want to waste your time. So first up, it's an Xbox layout, so a lot of you are not going to like that. It doesn't have the PlayStation layout, and also it is PC only, so that's probably going to exclude like 70-80% of you from even considering this controller, but I just wanted to be upfront with you about that right at the start. I'm going to go through each and everything about this controller that I think is better than other controllers that I've used or different. And the first one we're going to start with is polling rate or average input latency. On this chart, I have the average input latency in milliseconds on the y-axis and the controllers that I own across the x-axis, which are also some of the best controllers that exist. So from left to right, I have the SCUF Envision Pro. I have the PlayStation 5 DualSense Edge, I have the Xbox Elite Series 2, and then obviously the FlyDigi Apex 4 that this video is about. So, most people talk about controllers in terms of polling rate. I like to think that most people understand an average input lag, input latency for these controllers more than the refresh rate. So, you can convert the refresh rate directly to the average input latency. So, the SCUF Envision Pro over on the left here, 500 hertz controller, so that is a 2 millisecond input lag that it adds for any input, but your input's going to happen sometime between those controller ticks, basically. I think about these things in terms of stuff that I know, so server ticks and stuff like that. So your input's going to happen somewhere between 0 and 2 milliseconds, which means it's going to average out to exactly 1 millisecond of average input latency. PlayStation 5 DualSense Edge, 1000 hertz controller, so that means that it's going to have 1 millisecond of maximum input lag, and that averages out to exactly half a millisecond. The Xbox Elite Series 2, let me go back to the PlayStation 5 DualSense Edge. So the PlayStation 5 DualSense Edge out of the box is a 250 hertz controller, so that would be 2 milliseconds of average input lag, so it would be right up here. But you can use software on PC to overclock that to 1000 hertz to get it down to this half a millisecond. Next up, the Xbox Elite Series 2 has a 125 hertz polling rate with the PC, and that comes out to 4 milliseconds of average latency, and the Xbox controllers cannot be overclocked. They are stuck at 125 hertz, so they're worse than PlayStation by default, and then they also are not overclockable. So 3.5 milliseconds of input latency difference between the Xbox Elite Series 2 and the PlayStation 5 DualSense Edge. Over on the right, FlyDigi Apex, also a 1000 hertz controller, so that means that it matches the PlayStation DualSense Edge at half a millisecond of input lag. That first graph really made those differences between the average input latencies look super extreme, but I wanted to make a chart that shows the total system latency with these different controllers. So this is with my system, so I average around 30 milliseconds of total system latency, and I know that from testing things like open bolt delay and bullet velocities, where I actually watch my monitor at high speed and look for when I click, things like that, and I can see how long it takes from when I click the mouse or pull the trigger for something to happen on the screen. So I know my total system latency is about 30 milliseconds. A lot of people are going to go, oh my gosh, that's super high. But that's because you guys have seen tests from people using specific kits for testing input latency, and that's not really testing the full total system input latency like I am. So you'll see people with numbers way, way, way lower than that, but most of them are testing it in a different way. So it's not really comparable to what I'm showing here. So anyway, from click to fire or from trigger pull to fire, my system is 30 milliseconds right now. So if I was using the SCUF Envision Pro, it would be 31 milliseconds. So just a 1 millisecond increase. PlayStation 5 DualSense Edge, 30.5 milliseconds. Xbox Elite Series 2, 34 milliseconds. FlyDigi Apex 4, 30.5 milliseconds. So I'm not trying to say that these differences aren't important. They are important. You should always reduce your input lag if possible. But I just wanted to show that really the controller is a small percentage. So going from 500 hertz to 1000 hertz isn't that big of a deal. Going from 125 hertz to 1000 hertz is a pretty decently big deal. So I just wanted to show this so you could see the actual scale of how the controller stacks on the total system latency. Moving on to the stick types and the switch types and all of the buttons and things. So the Xbox Elite Series 2, this has rubber dome switches on the controller. So I'm going to press this a few times so you can hear it. So that's obviously rubber dome, not like a mouse click switch. The back buttons are the same. They feel a little better than the front buttons. And then it has regular old potentiometer sticks. This is what's been used in PlayStation, Xbox, SCUF. All these different controllers have used potentiometer sticks forever. So you've probably heard about Hall effect sticks. That's kind of the future. They are a different type of system, different type of physics used to determine where the stick placement is, and they're supposed to completely remove stick drift if done correctly. And I can confirm that at least my FlyDigi Apex 4 that I have has 0 stick drift. I can put it on 0 dead zone on the left stick and the right stick in COD, and it has no stick drift at all. The PlayStation 5 DualSense Edge, pretty much exactly the same as the Xbox Elite Series 2. So you can hear this is rubber dome. There's no clickiness at all. And same with the D-pad. The D-pad is rubber dome. The back switches are pretty good. Same as the Xbox Elite Series 2 across the board, pretty much. The SCUF Envision Pro has mouse switches all across the front. So this is SCUF Envision Pro. So these feel awesome on the ABXY buttons. You can hear that's literally just a mouse click switch. Same with the D-pad. And then it has those potentiometer sticks. I forgot to mention that for the PlayStation controller, but it also has potentiometer sticks. Now, one thing I want to mention, I hate the paddles on the SCUF Envision Pro. It has 4 buttons on the back, but they feel terrible. They're really hard to press. And I don't know, I have a really hard time pressing them and holding the controller in the right way at the same time. So that was a big negative for me on the Envision Pro. And then finally, we have the FlyDigi Apex 4. This has mouse switches pretty much across the board, or at least they feel like mouse switches. So ABXY, definitely just a mouse switch. The D-pad, also a mouse switch. And then the back buttons are super easy to press. And I'm not sure if they're mouse switches or not, but they feel like it. Like they're super easy to press and way, way better than the SCUF Envision Pro's switches. And then the big one is that this has Hall effect sticks. So hard to describe, but they are much, much smoother. They just feel amazing overall. And this controller is super cool. It's adjustable tension. So when you go to these different controllers, so Xbox feels different than the PlayStation Edge, than the SCUF. All the stick tension feels different. Like the Edge is a little more firm than, or a little less firm than the SCUF. So when you're switching between these controllers, and then the Xbox Elite Series 2 is like, way softer. There's way less stick tension on the Elite Series 2. So when you're switching between these controllers, if they don't have the stick tension you're used to, it's going to feel super weird. Or if you're new to controller and you want to tweak it for what feels good, the Apex 4 has actual modifiable stick tension. It's pretty crazy. All right, I've never done a video like this before, and I don't have a hand cam. So I'm going to try to do this with my cam in the normal spot because I don't want to move it. So basically how you do this is you just pop off the thumbsticks, you pop off the D-pad, and then you can just pull off the faceplate. It's just magnetic, so it's pretty easy to pop off. And then over here on the right, there's a little key in the side that you just slide out. So the key to adjust the sticks is built in, and it's like magnetically put in place. It's like everything on this controller just feels so premium and so good. Just even this little key snapping in and out of its holding place is crazy. So then right here and right here, you have little dials. And if you turn it clockwise, it tightens the stick. So it'll be harder to rotate the stick. Same with the left stick. You can turn it left, anti-clockwise, counterclockwise to make it even easier to move the stick. So super cool. You can adjust this however you want. Something else I do want to mention that's actually a negative about the Apex 4, I got used to it pretty much instantly, so it's not that big of a deal for most people, I'm sure. But all these other controllers I've talked about, they all have settings to have a mechanical stop for the triggers. So, for example, the SCUF Envision Pro, when I press this trigger, one, it's a mouse click, which is awesome. I love that. But it has super short travel, so you see I can't press the trigger down because there's a hard stop. So that's a setting on here, so I can make it be a normal trigger for like a racing game or something. But for a shooter, you just want as fast as possible. You want short travel. You can't do a physical stop on the FlyDigi Apex 4. So this is what it sounds like. It's just like a regular trigger, but it's a Hall effect trigger, so they can do cool magnetic things with this, where in the software, you can set a hard stop. Now, you can push through it because it's just magnet based, but it has a hard stop. So this is where I have it set. You can see it doesn't have much travel, but if I push hard, I can push through that. Now, it takes a lot of force to get through it, And like I said, I'm pretty much used to this right away. It didn't cause a problem for me at all. But the first hour or so, it felt weird because I kept like in intense situations where I'm like, you know, in a gunfight, I'm squeezing my controller super hard. I didn't even know I did that, but apparently I do. So like I started like pulling through both triggers, even though I have those stops set. But still, it's really cool that they don't have a physical way to do it, but it's a Hall effect thing. I believe it's Hall effect, and that makes it so they can actually have a magnetic stop at some point. There are different back button layouts for different controllers. So the Xbox Elite Series 2, for example, you can see that it has these paddles that extend down the sides. So that makes it so when you hold this, you can actually have a finger on each one of those, so you can hit them independently. Now the Apex 4 is one that kind of has them spaced across like the back horizontally, so you can't really do that. You kind of have to use the same finger on both sets of triggers. So I just wanted to mention that again, if you're used to using something like the Elite Series 2, it could be a little weird, especially if you use all 4 of the paddles. For me, the most recent controller I was using, I've tried all of these a bunch, but the most recent controller I was using was the Envision Pro. So this one is kind of like the Apex 4, where you have to, like, you can't really have your fingers on all 4 at once. It just doesn't fit right if you do that. So it wasn't a big problem for me. I pretty much only used 2 of the paddles anyway. And I used the DualSense Edge for a long time, which actually only has 2 paddles. So it wasn't a problem for me at all. The back buttons on this are my second favorite back buttons behind the Elite Series 2. It comes with a little wireless dongle that you can just plug in, or you can use it wired. Either way, pretty much the same performance. I don't really care about aesthetics and things like that too much for something like this because I'm not going to be looking at it as I'm playing, but it does have some cool little features. So these are all like these lights. You can barely see them because my room's so bright, but those are RGB. I have the brightness turned way down so they can get way brighter than that. And then obviously there's that little screen in the middle. So I got the little TGD logo there. It can be a little GIF that you can place in there, and it'll just cycle on the controller as you're playing, which is cool, I guess. I mean, I'm not really looking at the controller while I'm playing, but still pretty cool. Like I said, I found out about this controller from Art is War. I'm going to link his channel and his video down below. He did all kinds of polling rate testing, input lag testing, actual system latency testing. I worked with him to develop the testing methodology for him to actually do the full system latency testing with all these different controllers. He has multiple controllers as well, and he tested them all. So you guys should absolutely go watch his video. The only reason I know about this is because of him, so I'll link that down below. One last thing to mention, the FlyDigi software that you use to change your button bindings and change the little GIF on there and all the lighting and stuff like that, it's actually really good. It's a lot better than some of the other apps I've used, like iCue and things like that. It's funny that a smaller company can have way less confusing, better software than these bigger companies. But I wanted to mention that the software is pretty good. It's not amazing, but it is pretty good, very usable. And overall, it's just the best controller I've ever used, on top of fitting my hands correctly because I grew up playing Xbox. So I love it. I just wanted to share it with you guys. Again, not sponsored at all, just a cool product that I wanted to show you. Price-wise, it's actually priced really well too. So right now on Amazon US, it's $136, but there's a 15% discount coupon that you can put on. And then on AliExpress, obviously AliExpress, you're going to have a week or 2 shipping, but it's only $81 on AliExpress. So like there's a route to get this for pretty cheap, which I think is really cool. I mean, these other controllers on here, the SCUF Envision Pro is probably one of the cheaper ones, but like the Elite Series 2, like $150, $200, these are expensive controllers, and this is better in almost every way. I think that just about covers everything that I love about this controller. Basically, having a layout that fits in my hand perfectly well. It feels just as good, if not better, than the Elite Series 2. The back buttons feel great. It has a 1000 hertz polling rate. Having an Xbox layout and a 1000 hertz polling rate is pretty rare. It has Hall effect sticks and triggers. It has mouse click switches and all of the buttons and things like that. So it just feels great across the board. It feels super, super premium. And it's the exact controller that I've been looking for 2 or 3 years. All right, everyone, that is it for the video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.